Good morning, everybody. I appreciate Chris Willis, a real man of God, strives to do so much, and he was smart enough not to leave that big nail up here on the pulpit so I could put my hands on it. Talking about real Christianity, and that's what we're dealing with. And what a good example, trying to visualize what that nail must have been like, because it was real that he was crucified. And it's real that we are following him. And we've been talking since the beginning of this year and focusing our minds on trying to make Christianity meaningful and having a meaningful year. So this morning I want to talk about the idea of trusting in our walk to have a meaningful year, because it needs to be real. And if Chris had left that thing up here, I was going to show it to you one more time. But he snuck off with everybody. He said, I'm not leaving that up there to these preachers, no telling what they might do. He knows because he's a preacher's kid, missionary kid, along with several others in the congregation here. Job chapter 1. There is an event where God reveals something about life in there. God begins to talk about this character Job, and he is such a fine person that God describes him as righteous. Now there's a compliment if ever could be paid. And so Satan comes in and starts bargaining with God about Job, dealing with Job and what he can do with Job. And so Satan takes after Job. As you read through those verses there at the beginning of chapter 1, you'll find that one thing after another happens in the life of Job. And it's Satan doing everything he can to tear him apart. And there's a phrase in there that repeats itself after each event. And it says, as one man was just finishing speaking, so another servant comes in and tells him the next thing horrible that happened in his life. And then as that person was about to finish speaking, and then the next one comes in, and then he tells him, and from on and on all the way through, Job loses everything. And that's life. That's real life. We don't like it. Now here's the question out of all of this. How do you have a trusting walk with God when life keeps having issues like that? And you know that that story is there to relate to you, that this is a reminder of what your life is like, is it not? That about the time something bad just about gets over with and something else happens, and sometimes even before that hardly starts, then something else happens, and that's life. And so how do you walk? On top of that, we don't even know what's going to be happening tomorrow. And all these things we're going to try to work out in our life. And it's just meaningless to think we can do it on our own. God speaks to us through the prophet Jeremiah in chapter 10 of his book, verse 23. That Old Testament passage. And God says it's not in man who walks to direct his steps. Write that down. Go back and look at that. Because what God is saying here is you might be smart enough to know how to walk. That comes somewhere around 1 year of age. But the fact is, even like the 1-year-olds, you don't know where to walk, God says. It's not a man who knows how to walk to know where to walk, to direct his own steps. So how are we going to make it through life if we can't depend on somebody else to give us the direction? Of course, God's what we're talking about here. A trusting walk with Jesus is developed only when our eyes are fixed on him. Now let's start in Matthew chapter 14 as we look at what we're talking about here. A good illustration of what's going on. As we're engaged in the middle of Matthew, you can kind of visualize we're somewhere in the middle of Jesus' ministry. And his apostles are getting to know him by then. You think, well, they probably knew him to start with, and he did. When they left home and followed him, they knew something about him. But now they've seen miracle after miracle, and they're amazed, and they've heard the lessons, and they're further amazed, and they know that Jesus can handle anything. And so Things are going well. That he feeds 5,000 people in verses 13 to 21. We talked about that, matter of fact, a week or so ago. Now in verse 22, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and go before him to the other side, while Jesus sent the multitudes away. I'm going to take care of these thousands of people. You just get on over where we're going to, and I'll meet you. And when he sent the multitudes away, verse 23, he went up onto the mountaintop by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. It's nice for you to be alone once in a while, especially when you've got thousands of people around you always. Switch scenario from Jesus to the apostles, verse 24. But the boat that the disciples got into was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, this is like pitch black darkness, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him, of course at a distance to start with, walking on the sea, they were troubled and said, "It's a ghost." Wouldn't you think that? I mean, you don't think, oh, there comes Jesus, because nobody walks on the sea. And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Be of good cheer, for it is I, do not be afraid." Well, they recognize his voice. Above all, they know his voice. Maybe they can't see him real clearly. He's not that close yet, but close enough to talk. And Peter answered and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter come down out of the boat, it's not some little skiff now, it's got 12 men in it, so he's got to go down some steps to get out of the boat, and he goes down into the water, and it says he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But look at verse 30. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why'd you doubt?" Why'd he doubt? He was able to, above all the other apostles, to decide, I can do this too. I can follow my Lord even this far. Let me come. Just say it and I'll come. And he did. And so here he is, and he's stepping out, and he's watching Jesus until he sees the waves and the wind. And he loses his focus on where his support is. And this is what we're talking about. You can't have a trusting walk. You will sink if your eyes aren't focused on Jesus. And that's exactly what happened to Peter. As much faith as he had to get out of the boat, once he got out, he lost his focus. He knew his master. He understood where things were. He'd already left home, and yet he was sinking. Because just for that one moment, even the great apostle Peter lost focus. It can happen. We've got to have a meaningful year. We've got to make life real. Those nails, as we were looking at a while ago, they were real. Satan is real. Christianity needs to be just as real. And we've got to stay focused on the Master in order to make it. To make it that kind of walk. In order to make it a trusting walk, you have to stay focused on Jesus. If not, you'll give up, you'll lose heart, you'll faint, you'll get fearful, just like Peter did, the best of them all. Colossians chapter 3, if you want to turn there just for a moment. Unique discussion that Paul lends us toward. Verses 1, 2, and 3. Paul says it like this, and here's a man that can understand what it's like to need to focus. If then you are raised with Christ, like if you're a real Christian, in other words, if you want to have a meaningful life, in other words, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things on the earth. For you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. There's got to be this focus. We've got to press in that direction. if you can imagine it being some kind of machine, you bolt yourself to it, you tie yourself to it, you sew yourself to it, whatever that is that allows you to realize you're attached to Him and you're not going to go anywhere. This is where I'm at. This is where I belong. This is where life not only becomes real, but this is where I get my strength to have a trusting life. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. The fact is, verse 18 kind of helps us to see something a little unusual here. While we do not look at the things which are seen, but on the things which are not seen, for the things that are seen are temporary, and the things that are not seen are eternal. Now here's the problem. It's real hard to focus on something you can't see. It's easier to focus on lights and windows and podiums and things like that. We see those things. Imagine going into the eye doctor and you walk in and you're about to do your visual checkup. And he says, step up to the line. You see that chart in front of you? Yeah. Flips the lights off. And he goes, now focus on that. He goes, well, the lights are out. I can't see. Well, try harder. Focus on it. I can't see. And you see what I'm saying is by nature, when we talk about focusing on something we can't see, it's kind of difficult for us to conceive of. And yet, that is exactly what God's telling us to do. So we can't use our eyes, in other words. We can use our mind, we can use our heart, we can use the reality of the things that are more real, that are unseen than the things that are. And that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. Focusing on the unseen. We look at the Word of God and we understand that it relates to us messages that in fact did happen. It allows us to focus on the history of the actual events that took place, things we haven't seen, and know they're real. And know that the Christ that's being discussed there can carry me through if I put my trust in Him. So Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, when it's discussing that whole long discussion about faith, introduces that topic with, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things, what does it say, congregation? Not yet seen. We don't see them, but that's exactly where we need to start. That is our foundation. It gets us going in the right direction. And so then in chapter 12, Hebrews talks about fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and the finisher of our salvation. Exactly what Peter needed to learn. And it's exactly what we need to learn. Okay. Let's get to reality here, because right now, I can imagine you're listening, you're thinking, it's good talk, but I really signed up for that. I just kind of want to come in and I enjoy being here. It's a great congregation, friendly people, love it here. I've got a good faith, but I don't want to be that much into it. Maybe. Am I close? I don't want to just jump in overboard and get covered up like that. Probably so. At least some of us. It's a bit challenging, to say the least. You're talking about maybe rearranging your life in a way that you're not ready to do. Go back to that passage in Matthew for just a moment. Because this is not just about a miracle of Jesus and Peter walking on the water, or on Peter losing his focus. We talked about that. But I want you to notice something here. Go back to verse 28. And Peter answered him, after he hears Jesus talking, Lord, if it's you, he knows it is, command me to come to you on the water. And the Lord said, come. Now I want you to notice, first of all, that I think Jesus knew very well what was going to happen. He saw Peter, and he knew, once he got down, that he was going to look around. And he knew that Peter was going to sink. And he knew that he would pull him out of the water. But he let him do it anyway. Because he wanted Peter to recognize, hey, Peter, I realize you think this is a cool thing to do about stepping out on water, and it's a real challenge, but there's more to it than that. And he allowed the rest of the guys in the boat to watch what's going on, to take all this in. And then here's what happened. When Matthew starts penning the gospel, God says to him, by inspiration, you know, the Bible is inspired of God, you put this event in paper in black and white. I want other people to read about it. Not just so they can know about Peter walking on water, but because of the fact of sometimes when you're ready to get out of the boat with the Lord, you get out there and then the reality begins to hit, and it's not as easy as you think. And you think, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for the wind and the waves. I just signed up for the nice walk with Jesus on the water. Am I right? And this is exactly where Peter is. He wanted to get out and walk on the water, but he didn't sign up for all the other stuff, and that's when he became scared. But it will be a frightful journey if you signed up full-hearted. But there really isn't any other way around it. Other than that, you just sit in the boat and watch the events take place. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Your man read this just a little bit earlier. Parker does a great job. Verse 7, we'll start there. Well, we have this treasure. That's the gospel message, by the way, it's being discussed as a treasure. In earthen vessels. It's in our hearts. That the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. That's when we relate that message to other people. But here's what happens while Christianity is becoming real. We are hard-pressed on every side. Yet, Paul says, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying about in the body the dying of our Lord Jesus, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. Paul says, it's a painful walk. You will have these issues. You've got to trust Him in order to be able to be lifted up out of the water. But it will happen. Now here's the beauty of it. I want you to turn to this passage in the Old Testament. You might have read it before. It's called Psalm 23. Because as we're looking at this man who used to be a shepherd, talked about Jesus being a shepherd, relates to us that this walk is meaningful because God is going to be taking care of you through the entire walk, through the entire process. He'll be protecting you, guiding you, lifting you, watching over you every step of the way, all the way to the very end. So he says, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. See, God's never going to lead you or allow you to go anywhere that He's not going to be there to protect you. He's not going to allow you to go through anything in life that His grace, His protection, and His love won't be right there with you to help you through. Every difficulty you can imagine, the worst valley of the shadow of death that you can imagine, and it's not just death, but anything else along the way that's just taking you there. He's there all the way through. And so David says, the Lord's my shepherd, I don't need anything else. And you want to have a meaningful year. Recognize it's real. As that nail we looked at earlier. It's real. The crucifixion was real. But the plea from Jesus Christ to come follow me is just as real, and the footsteps behind Jesus are just as difficult as it was with Jesus. But there is no other path. Our trust in following him is not a trust of occasionally being alongside of him and chatting with him. It's not a casual pass down the path or a stop and visit along the way. But it's a march victoriously with the Son of God to get to heaven. And along the way there'll be difficulties, but it'll be real. And you'll be protected. You'll be guided. You'll be cared for. And His grace will accompany you every step of the way. This congregation, those visiting, is a great place. And they believe in a lot of things I'm saying. We just all need that challenge. Me also. To remind ourselves of how real this is about. To keep ourselves on track. To bring us back if we've slipped off. To tell ourselves this is what it's about. I want to have a meaningful year. I want to reach out into the downtown area. I want to get out into the world. I want to do what God wants me to do. I realize there are difficulties, but please help me to get back up and walk, even on water with you. Focus on Jesus and trust Him to be there. That's what it's about. Once again, remind you that next week we're going to be hearing someone that's important and discussing the evolution of what's going on in science world. You have a chance to reach out to some people this week and talk about this meaningful walk that we're on. Take advantage of the opportunity because it's meaningful. Your kids and a lot of our young people and other people are being attacked by the scientific world telling us there is no God, that evolution is our God, and on and on. And the fact is, they can't deal with the existence of God in their mind. I heard the craziest thing on a radio channel some years ago, and I was up early in the morning. I don't remember what it was about, but I was in the car and headed from A to Z, and it was about 4 in the morning. And I turned the radio on, and this guy was talking about aliens, and I thought he was kidding to start with. And he talked about different colors, the blue ones and the red ones and the green ones, and what all they meant. And after a few minutes, I thought, this guy's real. And it occurred to me as I was putting this lesson together that there aren't a lot of people out there praying against why the aliens don't exist. They don't care about that. What they don't like to hear about is why God exists. That bothers them. Because they know really it's undeniable. And they might declare to you, I don't believe it. They might talk about evolution in all these different ways, but the fact is they can't grapple with the idea of walking with Jesus. It's too real, it's too challenging. And we understand that. But we've got to make it real, and we've got to make a difference in their lives by it showing through ours. And it's time to march. It's time to be strong. It's time to hold fast and to keep on. If your life isn't right with God this morning, if you're not a Christian,